This happened a few months ago. I'm a geological surveyor, so I've spent years exploring the Appalachian Mountains. I thought I was ready for anything underground, but that day changed everything. I had just started into a cave that was marked on an old map, but had never been documented. It felt cool and damp, more than usual. I turned on my flashlight and it sliced through the darkness. The stillness wrapped around me like a thick fog. The further I went, the colder it got. At first, I thought it was just the cave, but something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling. After a bit, I heard it. A faint sound like whispers echoing through the stone walls. I stopped dead in my tracks. I held my breath, trying to figure out where it was coming from. Maybe I was being silly. I thought it was just wind. But that unsettling chill stuck around. I pressed on, my heart racing as I stepped deeper. As I walked, the feeling grew stronger. It felt like someone was watching me. I turned around suddenly, but nothing was there, just shadows dancing in the corners. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts. Yet, I still felt those eyes on me. Then I found carvings on the walls. They were rough and jagged, nothing like I had ever seen before. They looked ancient. An odd dread washed over me. Who had made these? I reached out to trace one with my fingers. The moment I touched it, a jolt went through me and I pulled my hand back like I was burned. Then there were the footsteps. I kept hearing them, soft but right behind me. I whipped around, but no one was there. I could feel panic rising. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. I was alone, after all. But my heart didn't agree. Suddenly, the cave opened into a large chamber. I thought I could breathe easier, but then the cold air rushed in. The whispers were louder now, like they were begging me to leave. I turned to run. My hands were clammy and my mind was racing. I burst into the daylight, gasping. But when I was outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. I glanced back at the cave entrance and that chill returned. Did I imagine all of it? Was there something in there with me? I didn't know. I still don't. I drove home, but the questions haunted me. I even checked myself for scratches or bruises, but nothing was there. The whispers lingered in my mind, unsettling me every night. I kept looking at the cave's map. I had left, but that cave never left me. Some mysteries should stay buried. I wish I could forget about that cave. I wish I could understand what happened. But some things are meant to remain hidden, and maybe that's for the best. The days passed in a blur after that. I tried to shake off what happened in the cave, but it clung to me like a shadow. Each time night fell, the whispers echoed in my mind, keeping me awake. I found myself pacing the floors of my apartment, the map of the cave laid out on my dining table. I stared at it, wondering what lay beneath those jagged lines. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from a friend, Dan. He was a fellow surveyor, someone who shared my love for exploration. I hesitated before answering. I wanted to tell him everything, but I feared he wouldn't believe me. Instead, we talked about upcoming projects and the usual work buzz. Eventually, I mustered the courage and revealed what I had experienced in that cave. I expected laughter or skepticism, but he went silent. "You should go back," he finally said. "Why would I?" "I nearly lost my mind," I replied, my voice quivering. "Because there could be more. Those carvings. Did you take pictures?" he asked. I hadn't thought about that. I shook my head, frustration bubbling. I could barely step out of the place with my sanity intact, let alone document it. But something about his suggestion dug into my thoughts. The urge to know what was really going on grew stronger. With Dan's encouragement, I made a plan to return to the cave the following weekend. As I prepared, I felt a mix of dread and excitement. I packed supplies and extra batteries for my flashlight. I even grabbed a small camera. Perhaps seeing the carvings again might bring clarity. On the day of my return, the sun hung high, and yet a heaviness settled in the air. I approached the cave, my heart pounding. The entrance seemed different, as if it were a mouth, waiting to swallow me whole. I paused at the threshold, recalling how I had bolted out just days before. But I pressed on. The familiar chill rushed over me once I stepped inside. I turned on my flashlight and aimed it at the walls, half hoping for some sign of what I had experienced. The air felt thick with something unnameable. The further I ventured, the more I noticed. My breath hitched when I spotted the carvings again. They were clearer, almost alive, shifting like a heartbeat. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, but this time they were different. They echoed with a rhythm. Someone else was here. Panic surged, but I forced myself to keep going. I snapped photos of the carvings, determined to document what I could. Then the whispers returned. They swirled around me, frantic, urging me to leave. "Get out! Now!" they seemed to chant. My heart raced and I turned to make my way back, but my flashlight flickered. Just as I reached for my bag, the beam failed completely. I was plunged into darkness. In that silence, I felt a presence. A cold gust swept by, almost tangible. My instincts kicked in. Run. But before I could take a step, I felt something brush against my arm, icy and foreign. I froze. And then I heard a voice, low and raspy. "You shouldn't have returned." That single phrase turned my blood to ice. I shot back toward the entrance, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat in my chest. I flew from the cave, panting and frantic, but the voice trailed behind me. It felt like it was ripping through the darkness, reaching for me. Just as I burst into the daylight, I screamed, stumbling onto the forest floor. But something was waiting. I wasn't alone. I stumbled backward, heart racing, trying to get my bearings. Sunlight poured over me, yet it felt cold somehow. I looked around, breathless, searching for what could have followed me from the cave. The trees stood still, their shadows long and ominous. That's when I saw it. A figure emerging slowly from the underbrush. My throat tightened as I wiped my eyes, half expecting a trick of the light, but no, it was real. A man, tall and slender, with a deceptively calm expression painted across his face. He was dressed in weathered outdoor gear, but there was something unsettling about him. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice smooth but with an undercurrent of something unsettling. I was just in the cave," I stammered, trying to catch my breath. My back was still against a tree, ready to push off and run if I needed to. "Ah, yes, that place," he said, nodding slowly as if he understood all too well. "It can be overwhelming." He took a step closer and I tensed. "You shouldn't go back there," he continued, tilting his head as though he were studying me. "Not after what you've experienced." "How do you know what I experienced?" I challenged, anger flaring mixed with fear. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say I know more about that cave than most." "What do you mean?" I demanded, my legs feeling heavy, ready to bolt. His gaze intensified, and he leaned in slightly. "There are things that lie beneath the surface, things that want to be found. They whisper to the curious, drawing them in." I felt a chill run down my spine. "And what happens to those who go too deep?" "Curiosity can lead to unfortunate endings, just like it did for the others," he replied, his tone almost casual. My skin prickled at the suggestion of a grim history. "You've been down there? You know what's in there?" I asked, my voice rising. I needed answers. "I do. And so do you, now." He began to circle me, and I turned my body to keep him in view. "You're bound to it. It has marked you." "Marked me? What are you talking about?" But he only chuckled softly, a sound that didn't bring comfort. "You'll understand soon enough. They're calling for you." In that moment, every shred of common sense screamed at me to get away. I stepped back, closer to the comforting distance of the trees, but no retreat could shield me from the weight of his words. "Wait," I shouted, desperate for a last chance at understanding. "Who are you?" He paused, an amused glint in his eye. "You can call me Cole, and soon you'll wish you had listened." Before I could respond, he vanished into the thickening woods, as if he'd never been there at all. I stood alone, the forest closing in around me. A sense of dread settled in, digging deep. The last thing I wanted was to go back to that cave, yet I felt an inexplicable pull. As I turned back to leave, my flashlight blinked on and off in my pocket, startling me. I needed to get home, but something told me this wasn't over. I had so many questions. One stood out above all. What happened to the others? And as I walked away, I couldn't help but feel the echoes of whispers chasing behind me, reminding me that the answers were still buried in darkness. I woke up the next morning with the unsettling feeling still coiled tight in my stomach. The sun streamed through my window, but it didn't bring warmth. I grabbed a glass of water and tried to shake off the dread that lingered from my encounter with Cole. The thought of the cave haunted me. It felt like it was calling me back. After a restless morning, I decided to take a walk. Maybe some fresh air would clear my head. I stepped outside, the cool breeze brushing against my skin. But instead of easing my mind, it only intensified my sense of unease. I found myself heading toward the edge of the woods near the cave. I told myself it was just curiosity, but deep down, I knew I was searching for answers. I took slow, cautious steps, hyper-aware of every crunch of leaves beneath my feet. As I neared the entrance, my flashlight flickered again, and I inhaled sharply. I reluctantly retrieved it from my pocket, noticing my hands shaking slightly as I turned it on. The beam cut through the gathering underbrush, revealing the rocky path that led into the darkness. I felt a mixture of fear and excitement. The remnants of Cole's words echoed in my thoughts. Curiosity can lead to unfortunate endings. I took a step back, but something pulled me forward. "Just a quick look," I muttered to myself, convincing my feet to move. I aimed the light into the cave, the beam trembling as it reached the mouth of the dark passage. The shadows danced ominously, and I hesitated. Was I really ready to go back in there? That's when I noticed something unusual on the ground, a worn piece of fabric, grayish and frayed at the edges. I knelt to pick it up, the coarse texture sending chills through my fingers. It looked like it belonged to a jacket, but not just any jacket. It was almost identical to one I had seen Cole wear. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me, a rustling in the brush. I whipped around, heart racing, expecting to see someone. But there was nothing and no one, just the trees, standing silent and still. Cautiously, I turned back to the cave, but that's when I felt it. A subtle shift in the air, a whisper that danced just out of reach. It was both chilling and inviting, somehow familiar, like the pull I felt earlier. I tightened my grip on the fabric, torn between the urge to flee and the desire to uncover more. I knew I shouldn't be here. I was crossing a line that had been drawn long ago, but I felt compelled to step deeper into the darkness. As I turned the flashlight back toward the cave entrance, the light faded and then blinked out entirely. I gasped, freezing in place as the growing shadows threatened to swallow me whole. "No, no, no," I whispered, panic rising. I fumbled with the flashlight, my breath quickening in the suffocating silence. That's when a voice whispered behind me, low and urgent. "It's time to find out the truth." My heart nearly stopped and I spun around, but the forest was empty. Alone again, the weight of the unknown pressed down on me. The echo of that voice lingered, promising answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. I stood there, caught between the light of reason and the dark whisper of the cave, and I didn't know which way to turn. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around me like a cloak. I could still hear that voice echoing in my ears, pulling at the threads of my courage. I clutched the fabric tighter, my mind racing with questions. Who had been with Cole? Why was I out here again, risking everything just for answers? I took a deep breath and fished out my phone. The screen lit up, and for a moment I felt a jolt of relief. But then I remembered how weak the signal was out here. No help would come, and a surge of dread rippled through me. Stay calm, I whispered to myself. I needed to focus. Maybe the cave wasn't the answer, but I felt that pull again. I couldn't just turn away. I stepped hesitantly toward the cave entrance, squinting into the blackness. My heart thudded in my chest as I slowly advanced, praying the flashlight would hold its charge. Just as I reached the threshold, a gust of wind howled through the trees, and the air thickened with an electric charge. The shadows appeared to sway, alive with a strange energy. What am I doing? I muttered, feeling foolish. I was about to walk into unknown danger when I froze again, this time at the sound. A dragging, scraping noise echoed from within the cave. My gut twisted, and I instinctively stepped back. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted movement at the cave's edge. I turned, illuminating it with my phone. A figure stood half hidden in the shadows. My pulse quickened. "Who's there?" I called, voice trembling. "Cole." It came out as a whisper, a ghost of a name with no body to match. But it felt wrong. "Step into the light," I demanded, trying to command the fear creeping into my voice. The figure didn't budge. Instead, it seemed to dissolve into the darkness. I took a step forward, my instincts screaming at me to run, but I wasn't ready to turn back. Another whisper reached me, clearer this time. "You have to see." I flicked the flashlight toward the cave again, and a brief glimmer caught my eye, something shiny poking out from the shadows. Curiosity warred with fear as I moved closer. It was a metal locket, reflecting the beam of my flashlight. My breath hitched. I recognized that locket. I had seen it around Cole's neck. That realization hit me hard. I dropped to my knees, my hands trembling as I reached for it. It slightly opened as I touched it, an engraved name barely visible. Ellie. The name felt familiar, a distant memory hovering just out of reach. The scraping sound grew louder, more insistent, followed by a breathless male voice. "It's not safe to be here." My head snapped up. I almost wished I hadn't done that, but my eyes roamed the darkness. Then I saw him standing there, Cole himself, his face pale, eyes wide with a mix of urgency and fear. "You shouldn't have come back," he said, taking a step closer. I felt a jolt of confusion. Answers burdened my mind, but suddenly the weight of warning settled in my gut. I could feel everything shifting around me. What had I stumbled into? I couldn't tear my gaze away from Cole. His presence felt like a lifeline and a threat at the same time. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to mask my fear with anger. "What's going on here?" "Just listen," he urged, stepping even closer. "You need to leave. This place isn't what you think it is." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. Before I could protest, the ground beneath us trembled slightly. I glanced behind him, the shadows creeping closer, swallowing the last rays of light from the flashlight. Something was wrong. The cave felt sentient, as if it were aware of our presence. "Cole, are you okay?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What happened to you?" He hesitated, as if weighing his next words carefully. I can't explain everything now. You're not ready." Suddenly, the scraping noise intensified, a grating, awful sound echoing through the cave. It seemed to be coming from deeper inside, and I felt a chill race up my spine. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I was paralyzed. "Stay away from there," Cole shouted, eyes wide in terror. "From where?" I glanced toward the darkness, trying to spot the source of the sound. I took a cautious step back, but then my foot caught on a rock, sending me stumbling. In that moment of distraction, a shadow flickered just out of reach, and for a second, I could swear I saw a figure flitting by, a glimpse of something pale, something human. Panic surged, and I stumbled back towards Cole. "Did you see that?" I shouted, gripping his arm. "There's something in here." "Yes, that's what I'm trying to warn you about." His voice cracked, filled with urgency. "You shouldn't be here, Ellie." The name echoed in my mind. Who is she? What does she have to do with all of this? As I pressed him, Cole's expression shifted to one of anguish. "She's tied to me and to this place. You have to leave before it's too late." I shook my head, frustration spilling over. "What do you mean? If something's wrong, I can help." "No." He took a step back, a deep crease forming on his brow. "Helping someone here is more dangerous than you know. You don't understand what's on the other side of those shadows." Then, without warning, an overwhelming darkness surged from the depths of the cave. It coiled around us, thick and suffocating. I whipped around, but I couldn't see the entrance. The light of my flashlight flickered ominously, and I felt the edges of my vision dim. "Cole!" I cried out, panic clawing at my chest. "What's happening?" Before I could piece together my thoughts, the shadows coalesced into a more definite shape, a dark figure emerging from the depths. The air crackled with tension, and I knew something was coming for us. "Run!" Cole shouted, but it was too late. Two piercing eyes glowed from within the dark, locking onto us. My heart raced as I remembered the locket and the name Ellie. Something sinister was here. I turned, adrenaline flooding my body as I sprinted toward the exit. Cole's voice echoed behind me. "Don't look back." But I couldn't help it. I needed to see. That was when everything went dark. When the darkness enveloped me, a cold grip wrapped around my chest. I stumbled, feeling the rough ground beneath my palms. My flashlight sputtered, casting frantic beams against the cave walls, but the shadows seemed to absorb the light. "Cole!" I screamed into the suffocating void. My voice echoed back, mocking me with an eerie, hollow sound. I pushed to my feet, desperate to grasp reality. Was he still behind me? I couldn't hear anything, not even the scraping sound that had sent our hearts racing just moments before. I turned in circles, my breaths coming in rapid bursts. Every direction looked the same. The chilling air swirled around me, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to know. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I held my breath, straining to see. There it was, a pale form darting just out of reach. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. Something was in there with me. I took a cautious step forward, but froze when I felt a ripple of something cold sweep across my skin. The ground beneath me shifted, a low rumble echoing through the cave. I turned and ran, fueled by sheer terror. "Ellie!" A voice called out, but it wasn't Cole's. The voice was soft, yet commanding. It seemed to pull at something deep inside me, a familiar thread teasing at the edge of my memory. "Who's there?" I cried, panic bubbling over. I strained to see through the thickening shadows, but the figure remained elusive, flickering like a faulty bulb. "Ellie, you have to come back," it said again, more insistent this time. I hesitated, the name echoing in my mind. I thought of the locket. The connection felt real. Had I known an Ellie? Before I could ponder any further, I launched myself forward. "Cole," I gasped, desperate again to find him. The cave tightened around me, its walls seeming to pulse with a life of their own. Then I stumbled into a larger chamber. My flashlight finally steadied, and the beams sprawled across the rough walls. They were laced with strange marks, symbols I didn't recognize but felt an inexplicable connection to. They seemed alive, shifting subtly under the dim light. "Ellie." The voice lingered in the air, deeper now, more urgent. I backed up, suddenly feeling trapped. "I'm not Ellie," I shouted, my throat dry and strained. "Only you can free us." A whisper echoed around me, wrapping around my mind like a fog. I felt the weight of it, heavy and oppressive. What did that even mean? A figure appeared again, this time stepping into the light. Its features were obscured, but the face felt oddly familiar. It was a woman, and an unsettling sense of recognition washed over me. My heart thudded painfully. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaky. "What do you want?" The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're closer than you think. You are part of this." Before I could respond, darkness swirled back around me, and the ground trembled once more. I could sense something lurking just beyond the edge of the light, a restless energy that seemed ready to pounce. Then it clicked. The shadows were alive, and they wanted something. I felt trapped, unable to move, as if the cave itself was holding me captive. And that was when I realized I no longer knew how to escape. The walls of the chamber felt like they were closing in on me. I could hear the faint whisper of the woman, words that twisted themselves in my head. "You are part of this." What did that mean? I was just a girl lost in a cave trying to find my friend. I scanned the room, hoping for an exit, but all I saw were those strange symbols. They pulsed and swirled, as if they held memories I was too frightened to unlock. The electricity in the air buzzed, leaving my skin prickling. "Please!" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Where's Cole? What do you want from me?" The silence that followed felt heavy, the shadows around me thickening like a fog that refused to lift. Then, from behind one of the walls, came a grating sound. I whirled around, flashlight aimed as it flickered, threatening to cut out again. To my horror, I saw a small figure emerge from the shadows. It was hunched, thin limbs outstretched, the same pale color as before. "Ellie," it rasped, a voice distorted by something ancient, something unnatural. I took a step back, heart racing. "I'm not Ellie," I shouted again, desperation etched in my voice. The figure only leaned closer, eyes glinting in the flashlight beam. There was something familiar in those eyes. I shuddered, blood running cold in my veins. "Only you can help us," it said in a voice that sent chills down my spine. "Remember?" The flickering light illuminated the strange markings again, and I felt as if they were calling to me. Instinctively, I took a step toward the wall, drawn to a particularly deep groove. It looked almost like a path, curved and inviting. Had it always been there? "No!" The woman's voice boomed from the shadows. "Stay away from the markings." I snapped my head back, trying to process the warning. Confusion gnawed at me. Something was wrong. Why was I even considering following those marks? Before I could make sense of it all, the ground began to shake violently beneath my feet. The tremors intensified, and I stumbled, heart racing in my chest. The shadows twisted around me like a storm, and I could hear the whispers growing louder. "Help us. Only you." Then everything went black, and the flickering flashlight failed me. Panic flooded my senses as I grasped for something steady, anything that could anchor me to reality. I couldn't breathe, but then, just as suddenly, the darkness lifted. I found myself in a different part of the cave, which felt impossibly larger, as if I had crossed into another world entirely. The air shifted, filled with an overwhelming energy. In front of me stood a massive stone archway, intricately carved with the same symbols from the earlier chamber. That's when I saw it, a glimmer of light breaking through the arch. I approached slowly, dread mixing with curiosity. I had to know. But how close could I get before the dark came back to swallow me whole? "Cole," I whispered, a fresh wave of determination washing over me. I needed to find him, and I had to figure out what this labyrinth of shadows meant for both of us. But as I neared the arch, I could sense something watching me, lurking in the background, ready to make its move. I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was waiting just beyond that threshold. And whatever it wasn't friendly. As I stepped closer to the stone archway, the soft glow intensified, bathing me in its strange, ethereal light. I hesitated, glancing back at the darkness behind me. The whispers had faded, but the feeling of being watched remained, heavy and oppressive. I could hear my heartbeat thumping in my ears, drowning out the silence. With a deep breath, I crossed the threshold. The air crackled around me as if charged with energy. I half expected the cave to swallow me whole. Instead, I stumbled forward into a circular chamber, the light illuminating a vast expanse before me. The space was incredible. The ceiling spiraled high above, adorned with shimmering crystals that sparked like stars. But even the beauty of the cave couldn't mask the unease settling in my stomach. I felt small and exposed, as if the walls themselves were closing in. "Cole!" I shouted, hoping my voice wouldn't echo forever into the void. No response. Instead, at the far edge of the chamber, I noticed something moving. A shadow flitted between the stalagmites. My heart raced again. Caution nagged at me, but I felt drawn to investigate. What if it was Cole? What if he was trapped, just like I had been? I crept forward, my flashlight beam cutting through the eerie glow. The walls here glimmered with more symbols, but now they seemed to shift and rearrange as if alive. I couldn't look away. They whispered to me, drawing me in. Then I heard it. A faint whimper. It sounded like Cole. My chest tightened. "Cole, is that you?" I called out again, my voice trembling. With each step I could feel the energy rising, pulsing in tandem with my anxiety. As I rounded a large stone formation, the light from my flashlight caught sight of a figure. It wasn't Cole. The air went still and I froze, the world around me coming to a standstill. A woman stood there, her form translucent and shimmering. Her eyes were wide, filled with an icy terror. "Help me," she at last whispered, her voice soft but frantic. "You have to remember." "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, uncertain whether to step closer or back away. "I'm trapped between the worlds," she said, glancing around nervously as if the shadows were alive. "You can help us break the curse, but you must be careful." "Help who?" I pressed, unable to comprehend her words. "What curse?" Just then, the shadows deepened, and I could see them moving, swirling around the edges of the chamber. They began to pool together at the foot of the stone archway I had just come through. My heart sank. "Run!" the woman screeched suddenly, her voice piercing through the tension. Before I could react, black tendrils shot from the shadows, reaching for me. Panic surged. I turned on my heel and sprinted away from the archway, adrenaline making my legs feel like lead. As I fled, I glanced back, and through the chaos, I saw the woman transform, her face contorting in fear. "You have to find the key," she cried out. I stumbled into the heart of the chamber, desperately scanning for an exit. The shadows lunged, grasping at my clothes, but my determination pushed me onward. I couldn't let them take me. Not now. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something glinting on the ground. It looked like a small, ornate key. The moment I reached for it, the shadows recoiled, and a violent hiss filled the air. As I stood, key in hand, I realized I had only traded one form of terror for another. Something was coming for me, and now more than ever, I needed to understand what it all meant. "Cole!" I shouted, desperate to find him before it was too late. The shadows writhed around me as I grasped the ornate key, its cold metal grounding me momentarily amidst the chaos. I could still hear the woman's urgent cries, but I couldn't linger. The darkness pulsed hungrily, hungry for my every heartbeat. I turned away from the arch, feeling a sense of urgency that drove me deeper into the vast chamber. "Cole!" I shouted, the name echoing against the crystalline walls. Each step felt like it pulled me further from reality, the air around me thick with dread. As I scanned the chamber looking for any sign of him, I could feel the weight of the key pulling at the edges of my mind. Why did it feel so important? The shadows thickened around me, creeping closer with each hesitant step. I darted behind a large stalagmite, hoping for some momentary cover. The whispers returned, insistent, clawing at the periphery of my consciousness. Find him. Unlock the truth, they murmured, intertwining with my own mounting panic. What truth? I whispered, more to myself than the unseen figures surrounding me. What does any of this mean? Just then, I caught a movement out of the corner of my eye. There, behind another formation, was Cole. Relief surged through me, but it was quickly followed by dread. He looked dazed, staring into the shadows as if entranced. "Cole!" I called, rushing toward him. The shadows seemed to hiss, retreating momentarily as I broke into the light of the chamber. When I reached him, I grabbed his shoulders, shaking gently. "Cole, we have to get out of here." His eyes flickered with recognition, then wariness. "Ellie, you shouldn't have come back. The cave doesn't want us to leave." "What do you mean?" My voice trembled as I strained to make sense of his words. "I have the key. We can escape." He looked down at my hand, where the key nestled protectively in my palm. "It's not that simple. You don't understand. That key can open something, but not just any door. You have to know where to place it." I glanced at the carvings on the walls, at the swirling symbols that had whispered to me, beckoning me forward. "Where?" I asked, my resolve strengthening. "If there's a way out, we can find it together." His gaze shifted to the archway, shadows swirling ominously behind it. "We need to get to the original site of the carvings, the entrance where I found them. It's the only way to—" He froze, terror washing over his face, and I turned to see dark tendrils cascading toward us once more. Without thinking, I tightened my grip on the key and spun, darting toward the center of the chamber. "Over here, Cole," I cried. He followed, his eyes wide, but I felt that the darkness had tasted our fear. Now it wanted to claim us. As we raced deeper, I could hear shattering whispers. "You cannot escape. Only the darkness can free you." Somehow, those voices felt familiar, but I couldn't process what they meant. All that mattered was survival. We reached a series of intertwined symbols spiraling on a wall, pulsating with a soft light. The moment I stood before them, the whispers faded, leaving only the drumming of my heart in my ears. "This is it," I gasped, breathless. "This is where we use the key." "Are you sure?" Cole's voice shook as he planted himself beside me, hands clenched into fists. "I have to be. Can you feel the energy here? It's guiding me." I took a deep breath and placed the key into a deep groove, intertwining with the ancient markings. The moment it clicked into place, a blinding light erupted from the symbol, illuminating the entire chamber. "Seal that door." The urgent voice of the woman reappeared in my mind. "Only you can shift the balance." With every ounce of strength, I twisted the key, bracing for what might happen. The shadows sputtered wildly, clawing at the edges of light, retreating as if scorched. The energy in the air vibrated, and I felt something shift, a wave of power coursing through me. Suddenly the archway began to solidify, the shadows refusing to encroach any closer. The woman's voice resonated within me. "You've opened the way, now seal it before they draw you back." "Cole, help me. We need to anchor the light." I turned toward him, but found him standing frozen, mouth agape, his eyes darting toward the shadows. "Cole, focus!" I shouted, fear and urgency flooding me. He shook his head as if waking from a trance, and together we pressed our hands against the wall, willing the light to expand. The whispers turned to frantic screams that echoed through the chamber. Suddenly the ground quaked, and I risked a glance back at the encroaching tendrils. Just as they lunged toward us, the light blazed brighter, the symbols glowing intensely, forcing the darkness to recoil like a wounded beast. As we anchored ourselves to the warmth of the light, I felt a pull, a feeling that time was unraveling, that I was standing on the precipice of something much larger than just us. A final crack rippled through the air as reality quaked. The shadows hissed, almost pleading, but the light surged forth, enveloping us in its embrace. Just when I thought we were lost to the darkness, a blinding flash enveloped us completely. A kaleidoscope of colors swirling together like a maelstrom. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I felt the world around me being ripped apart, reality disintegrating before my very eyes. And then, silence. As the light faded, I found myself sprawled on the grass outside the cave entrance, dazed and panting. The air was warm, filled with the rustle of leaves and distant birds. The cave loomed behind me, dark and foreboding, but I felt the weight of the night lifted. "Cole," I called, my voice echoing in the stillness. No response. I pushed myself up, scanning the surrounding forest, but I was alone. The remnants of the cave were quiet, almost peaceful. Had I escaped? My heart raced as I turned back toward the shadows, blending into nothingness. Would he ever come back? What had truly happened underground? I still had so many unanswered questions, questions that echoed in my mind as I walked away from that cursed place. Some mysteries weren't meant to be solved. As I stepped into the sunlight, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was calling from deep inside that cave was still watching, perhaps even waiting for its next unwitting explorer.